When you have a balanced reed, and it's beautifully balanced on a symmetrical mouthpiece, the consequence of that is that the reed itself doesn't have to be forced to vibrate. Really, all you need to do is seal the lips around the mouthpiece reed wedge and put air into the horn, and you should get an instant response with a clear sound without any closing. All you're doing is sealing, and you'll feel just a little equal amount of snugging against the lower and upper lip. That's what you're looking for, because that's the way you're going to get your most beautiful sound. Equal amount of pressure or snugging, because by pressure I don't mean jaw pressure, closing. Equal amount of pressure from the snugging on both lips, and just put air through the horn, and the reed will speak. That's when the reed is properly placed on the mouthpiece and properly balanced to fit it so that the left ear and the right ear produce the same resistance, the same resonance, and the same resonance decay. So resistance ringing in the sound and resonance decay, and the sound should be ringing and clear. The reason a reed is not clear, the reason the sound is not clear, is because one ear is not responding the same way as the other. One ear, the left ear, say, is heavy, and so when you play, you're using enough energy to make the right ear ring so you get a sound, but the left ear isn't closing. So what you get is a combination of the sound and air going through the clarinet, because the left ear isn't closing. And when it's not closing, it's not transforming your air into vibration. So you have to have both of those ears to be very sensitive in identical response. So the minute you put air into the horn, both of them vibrate, even at soft dynamics. I'd say especially at soft dynamics, and especially at soft dynamics when you're playing in the upper register. So those are the things you're going to be looking for in the reed and what the reed must be. Primarily and fundamentally, the reed has to be finished in a way that it's properly balanced so that you can play correctly behind your nose. Bad reeds, badly balanced reeds, will cause you to have to do things that you ought not to have to do behind your nose, and it will ruin your playing and will also make playing double lip very painful and frustrating. So spend your time working on reeds. It's probably, I'd say, it's of equal importance to actually practicing French embouchure, and it's going to make it a lot easier. In fact, it's going to make it downright fun. So let's move on to our next subject. If you have any questions about this, write me down below. I'll be glad to try to make a good response. So exactly what are we trying to achieve with double lip playing in terms of the sound itself? Well, I'd have to say that we had to think a little more broadly than just something like a narrow concept of what this color should be. You know, you may have an abstract idea of, oh, you've got this golden sound in mind, and that's what you want to try to produce. This is not the way you want to think about clarinet playing and the clarinet sound. First of all, the sound should be good, but it should be consistent from bottom to top. Consistent in color and in shape and in clarity and in resonance at all dynamic ranges throughout the whole pitch range of the clarinet. And the sound that you're looking for with French embouchure is a concentrated and focused sound. So you're not trying to achieve something big and dark and fat. That will not carry. What you need is a complete complement of overtones, resonance, depth in the sound, and yet ringing and resonant all the way up with a good proper balance of lows, mids, and highs in the sound. The focus of the sound is achieved mostly by the tongue position and partly by the snugging. What frustrates the focusing of the sound or concentration of the sound is the same thing that frustrates the immediate response without biting, and that is a mismatch or an imbalance between the mouthpiece and the reed. I know I sound like a broken record, but I can't emphasize it enough that you need a reed that's going to immediately speak just when you seal and put air through the horn and achieve a proper tongue position with the air. So that's what you're basically looking for in the sound. A good, proper balance of overtones. Tongue position is going to help a great deal. Most of you are used to centering the sound or focusing the sound just by clamping more. And that does raise the pitch, and it does focus the sound a little bit, but it does it at the expense of the resonance and depth and the ringing the sound should always have. Mr. Wright, in my conversations with him and conversations with others who knew him a lot better than I did, he had a couple of what I've called categorical imperatives. And one of them is the sound should be ringing. You're always looking for a clear, resonant, ringing sound. Go on YouTube, listen to Harold Wright play, and you'll hear this beautifully balanced sound. Not some kind of dull, dark sound. It will not carry. It may be pleasant to you, but it will not carry. So, again, a lot of this has to do with the ear training. Listen for the sound to be clear and ringing and consistent throughout. So that's the tone concept of the French school, but it's not just tone. It is the legato, the consistency of the air stream. Once the setup is all proper, mouthpiece, reed, and then the mechanics are all proper, then the airstream can act with much more confidence in creating all the dynamic levels and creating smooth and beautiful legato. You'll find a big improvement in the consistency of everything. In talking about that, I want to share with you one thing that I read in an article years ago where it was a self-interview, and I can't remember exactly who the guy was, but it was in the Clarinet magazine. It's years and years ago. But he was talking about tone, and he said this about tone. He said, the function of tone is phrasing. And I don't think anything manifests that more clearly than the goals and the mechanics of French embouchure playing. In other words, most people think of tone as this golden abstract thing, a ding en sich, as the philosophers say, a thing in itself. No, it's not. The tone is not a thing in itself. The tone is a servant, the handmaiden, so to speak, of the musical phrase. We're not producing individual tones that are glorious and wonderful. Leave that to your door buzzer. No, the clarinet's not a door buzzer. The clarinet is a phrase-making machine. And this is where French embouchure playing shines. When everything is in balance, the reed's in balance, the mechanics are correct, tongue position is correct, and the air is flowing, then you're going to have a setup that produces beautiful, smooth shape, elegant phrases. Your connections between note to note are going to be a lot better. And your articulation is also going to have a lot more life and a lot more consistency. So all these things are beneficial, but it all has to come together. It can't be just, I'm going to get the embouchure right. You can't get the embouchure right unless you have the reed mouthpiece wedge right. And you can't do that until you learn how to properly test and balance reeds. So it's a whole system. It's just not one isolated thing that you can change and then voila, you get some results. You may get a little better result. I certainly did. I got enough to encourage me. But then there was this long slog trying to figure out things because I wasn't achieving the level of playing that I wanted to achieve. So those are some of the things in outline that really are going to help you in developing and playing double lip. And if you do these things, they will tend to encourage you and increase your success. But ignoring them, especially the reed finishing and learning to test reeds and learning to play correctly, ignoring these things are going to make your venture into playing French embouchure a very short venture altogether, and you will abandon it because it will be painful, uncomfortable, and frustrating. Now let's move on. Considering now we have all these things going, let's talk about the one more thing that's really important about the embouchure and the relationship of the embouchure to the mouthpiece reed wedge. Coming up next. Okay, let's say you've got a good mouthpiece reed set up, and you've got the snugging idea of bringing the reed mouthpiece wedge to the face, never bringing or closing the face on the mouthpiece. You've got all that in line, okay? So the question is, how much snugging do you do? Well, this is the beauty of French embouchure. First of all, Keith Stein says this about French embouchure. He says that with French embouchure, you tend to play the reed or play the sound where you find it. So you snug until you hear the right sound. This is so important because the sound concept has to be there. You're looking for that focused sound, ringing and clear, with that beautiful complement of lows, mids, and highs. And if you want an ideal, you want light at the end of the tunnel to as a goal, go listen to Harold Wright. Listen to how beautiful the sound is and how beautifully he connects everything. There is no lunatic idea of, I'd say the concrete idea of single lip, like put the mouthpiece 1/4 of an inch into your mouth or something like that. That's ridiculous, okay? A concrete embouchure is an embouchure that is totally inflexible, that can't really respond to the particulars of the setup that you have. And those setups vary. No matter how hard you labor because you're dealing with the reed, there's going to be differences. And there has to be flexibility behind your nose in order to get the best out of whatever that you have there. But of course, it's incumbent on you to make it the best that it can be. So you snug the mouthpiece until you get that focused ringing center. The tongue positions up, the thumbs snugging up, and boom, the sound should just appear when the air hits the reed, without closing and without clamping. Now, what about the high register? Well, some reeds are going to respond better in the high register than others, but if you find that slurring into the high register or playing attacks on high notes are not as easy with some reeds, even though they're well balanced, then again, you need to snug just a little bit more mouthpiece, against a little more firmness against the lower and upper lip. And again, there's going to be a tendency, because you're so used to it, to clamp, to force that reed into vibrating. You're going to lose the beauty of the sound, the ringing of the sound, and the depth of the sound up high. And those high notes are going to sound thin, even though they may speak, because you're biting and you've killed the resonance in the reed. No, snug, lift, snug a little bit more mouthpiece until that high note comes right out, or until the high register speaks. So it's always thumbs up when you're going to snug, when you're going to play into the third register of the clarinet. So there is some variation. It's not again like single lip, which is so often taught like concrete, like totally inflexible. No, there's some variation here, and that's part of the beauty of it. You play the sound where you find it, but if you don't know what the sound should be, you're not going to be able to find it. So this is the important thing, to develop the concept. Don't neglect listening to great players like Harold Wright and listen to the sound, particularly the color, the shape. Focus is really, really important. And listen to how they do legato, how Harold Wright plays legato. It's just really, it's kind of uncanny. And there are other players that achieve this too. I can think of Maurice Allard, for instance, a great French bassoonist. Listen to him on YouTube. You guys, it's really wonderful how much more access you have to things than I did when I was a young player trying to scramble around and learn the clarinet and find some path, find some way as to what kind of playing that I wanted to do. So you have all this benefit of YouTube. Stop listening to the cat, watching the silly cat videos, okay? And the bird videos. They're cool, I admit. But, spend a little time away from them and educate yourself by listening to some really great players and some really great singers. I would recommend Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau and Elizabeth Schwarzkopf, and listen to how they perform and try to emulate the things that they do. Whatever you do, just don't imitate clarinet players, because, well, that's another video. Finally, there is the question of how much reed you should take in your mouth. Now, I've seen a lot of misleading things about certain players taking a lot of mouthpiece into their mouth, and I'll tell you, that is utterly and totally misleading. If you haven't seen it already, I have an analysis of Harold Wright. We have a photograph, a very nice photograph that was supplied. Anyway, in that analysis, if you look closely, you'll see that Harold Wright does not have very much mouthpiece in his mouth. Now, I've talked to a lot of oboists about this, and most of the oboists do not concentrate on taking a lot of reed in the mouth. The idea is that more reed in the mouth doesn't mean more sound. What does it mean? It means less control. That's what it means. If your reeds are properly balanced, you should play the clarinet like the oboe. The reed is balanced. The reed's going to ring and resonate because it's balanced tip to back. And you're going to just need a small amount of mouthpiece in your mouth. The only time you might need a little more is when you're reaching for a high note and the reed isn't exactly pristine. Then you want to snug a little bit more, again with the equal pressure, upper and lower lip. That's really a really critical point. Don't think about bringing the jaw out and taking a bunch of reed in your mouth. That's a formula for failure. You never will get the pristine focus and control and nuance over the reed by taking a lot of reed in your mouth, a lot of mouthpiece in your mouth. It's fool's gold, okay? And it's very misleading. But mainly you lose all the ability to achieve the beautiful nuanced things that you do get with French embouchure playing. So a small amount of mouthpiece, well-balanced reed, this whole combination together, it all works together. Now, we're going to have a final word about how you should practice and things you can avoid that are really important.